This video is brought to you by my patrons and by viewers like you.
Greetings, groovy people. Welcome to Blue Dragon Art. I'm the self-proclaimed Blue Dragon. This is an art-related channel where I discuss different aspects of art, whether it be comic art that I work on, or comics that I'm interested in, or other art-related topics. And sometimes I just talk about whatever the fuck I feel like, but usually it's relating to art and what my specific interests are in art. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about critique, which I've talked about before in past videos, but I want to talk about it in terms of the project that I've been working on in a classroom setting. I've talked about, like, you know, the plus and minuses of critique a lot. I don't really want to go into too much about that in this video. If I can find the link to the other video where I give my actual opinions on critique, I'll link that down in the description. But in this video, I want to talk about, like, how working in a group, or working, not even so much in a group, but working with a group of your peers who are also working on their own projects, how there can be value in that. And I'm going to give examples of, like, suggestions that I've received that I was able to take on and actually implement, and I really liked and I thought would be a good idea, and how it's improved, I feel, what I've been working on. And I'll also give a few examples of suggestions that I've been given that I'm on the fence about whether or not I'm going to take that suggestion. And then I will talk, probably give a few examples where I was given a suggestion and I thought, well, that's in my opinion, I don't really feel like that's all that applicable. And I am kind of showing off what I've been working on and, like, the classes that I've taken, but also I wanted to just kind of show, like, how I apply critique and kind of give, like, a real life example of critiques that I've gotten, how I've applied it, or when I've ignored it, or when I'm still, like, kind of thinking about whether or not I'm going to accept that suggestion or not. I hope that all makes sense. Just real quick up front, I'm obviously not, like, a professional published artist. I do indie comics. I work on things independently. I don't work with a publisher. I'm only self-published in, like, certain things. So if you're here looking for suggestions on how to get published in the publishing world, the professional world, you're in the wrong place, because I don't give a shit about the professional world. And not to say that, you know, I don't enjoy commercial art. I definitely do, but that's not what I don't have a desire to produce something like that. It's fine for other people, and I certainly do sometimes consume it, definitely. I mean, I would be lying if I said I didn't. But I don't have any desire to, like, break into, like, the professional corporate world. I want to have the freedom to speak my mind without, with my own censorship and my own, like, picking out what I do and don't want to talk about or publish, if that makes sense. And I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, considering that I'm discussing critique and suggestions and things that people have said, you know, I could leave out or I could add in or whatever. But I feel like it's a very different world when you have the option of accepting a critique versus if something comes down, like, the line and you're told you cannot do this because somebody else is paying for your publication. That's, like, I feel like that's two different things. Like, I feel like having that freedom of choice is very important, because, you know, you'll oftentimes hear, like, the editor's cut or the whatever, blah, blah, blah. This was left out. This was left on the floor because someone was told not to do it. And it's just like, you know what? I don't want someone having that control over my personal, like, voice and shit like that. So, and there's a lot of reasons why, but I don't need to get into those reasons. It's nobody's business. I just don't want to. I want to speak my mind. Okay, so let's see here. We're gonna get started. I'm gonna go in order of how this work that I'm completing is gonna go. There's lots of empty spaces because I'm still working on it. You know, summer has hit and I haven't gotten shit done because I'm working on the Comic Fury zine. I am gonna try to have a Friday video out, actually, a Friday night video where I do a tour of it. It will be age restricted because it is not safe for work. The fall zine that we have coming out later this year, the second of our biannual publication, that one's gonna be safe for work, so I'll be able to share, like, some of the art without, like, any censorship. But yeah, I'm gonna have, like, the age restriction for sure on the Friday videos. So if it's something you're interested in and you're of legal age, which you should be, because my channel's not for underage people. I'm not catering to that demographic. So if you are underage, you need to leave this channel. You should probably not even be on, what do you have to be 13 or something? And even then you're still underage to be on YouTube. I don't know. I've given up keeping up with what the fuck YouTube's doing. But at any rate, 18 or older, or whatever your legal age is in whatever country you are in. Because I try to not censor. Like, I do censor, but like I do a lot of stuff that's uncensored on this channel also. Okay, so I'm gonna start with this. I talked about this in another video, or I didn't really talk so much about it, but I had my steps on how I complete work and keep myself self-motivated. I have like deadlines and stuff, which I need to totally rearrange my schedule, because my schedule's just gone off the rails since the class ended. And we have a new dog. Well, she's not new now, we've had her since March, but I talked about her in the last video, in the Friday video. So I gotta figure out how I'm gonna work on this more and work on my other projects. So the first chapter here is actually not the first one that I worked on. The very first thing that I did for this project was actually this page here, which was Sense of Place, was the assignment. And I'm incorporating this work from the winter semester into, you know, this larger kind of biographical thing that I'm working on about my father and like my relationship with him. And so on this specific one, whenever we were doing our critiques, I actually didn't really get too many like suggestions on what to do with it. I mean, it is just a very simple, it's a single page, right? It's a single page, and it fulfilled what the assignment was. So for the most part, I didn't get like I was told what worked well, and there really weren't any critiques on what wasn't working, aside from like the professor wasn't really sure, and this is like throughout all the things that I've been doing. He wasn't really sure if he cared about having like, so I do blue lines, right? I've been working in like blue pencil lead for a while now, because it can be a hassle erasing the graphite. And if I'm doing the graphite and I ink right over the graphite instead of tracing it as I used to do once upon a time, then quite often the graphite, I can't erase it enough for it to not be picked up by the scanner. And because it's a similar shade as black, even when I like raise the threshold of white and black on the page in Photoshop, it still leaves a lot of artifacts behind. So one of the things that other artists have used in the past quite often are blue lines. But yeah, so I started using like the blue pencils so that I could ink over it and scan my work in and screen tone it and remove all of my sketch lines. Because it's a different color than the black ink, I could use the wand tool and pick it up and get rid of it without like messing with my black line work, if that makes sense. And when I started doing this project, I decided that I didn't want, hey, Phyllis, get out from behind there, buddy. Good girl, good girl. I decided that I didn't want to color this digitally. I thought, because I haven't been working on The Whimper in the Dark, which is a comic that I use washes in, primarily black and white, but then I like will often use like a color that is the only color in the little arc, the story arc or the short story. Or, you know, I use more colors, but it's primarily black and white, and it's all color washes. I decided that I wanted to do a color wash for this also, because I'm not working on that project at the present, and I really like doing color washes. I also, in some ways, think that it's a little bit quicker. Like, I do have to wait for it to dry, but things dry relatively quickly. And just the way I work, I am a lot faster when I'm working with traditional art than when I'm on the computer. Although I've gotten better at it, but I still, I mean, I like to use a combination of the two. It satisfies different parts of my brain to work in different mediums, right? So because I had decided to do a color wash on this, but my sketch was in pencil, I just wanted to kind of see what it would look like if I just washed right over it instead of having to trace and, you know, trace my pencil work and keep all the line work out. I thought, you know, well, let me see what this looks like. And a couple people in like my beginner comics class really liked it. The professor didn't, or somewhat, well, the teacher, I don't think he has his doctorate, but he's a living, working, published, independent author. So, I mean, who cares if he doesn't have his professor title? He's actually living the dream, right? Or doing it and publishing. So I consider his like real life experience just as valuable as jumping through all the hoops. It's just a different route of getting to the same place, right? One's not necessarily better than the other, and one shouldn't devalue the other just because he doesn't have like his master's. And maybe he does. I don't know. He didn't get into it, and I don't care to ask because he's pretty good artist. I follow him on Instagram. But anyway, I digress. Oh my God, I have to do that because it's like, I 100% respect the world of academe, but I also respect the world of quote unquote self-taught, which really we're not ever self-taught. We just are maybe more self-disciplined and are finding other people and other ways to teach ourselves. It's just different ways of, again, different paths leading to the same goal of creating your stories and finding a way to, you know, visually explain what's in your brain to other people or just to yourself, you know? So I like to do that disclaimer because I 100% love getting college educated, or I wouldn't even take community college classes, or I wouldn't have gone to, well, that's another story, but I would do it again, but I would do it differently. I would go to college again, but I would do things differently if I had the chance again. But I just want to say that I don't like shit all over academe because I did learn quite a bit while I was in school, and I really credit that to like, you know, helping shape who I am today, in addition to like making lifelong friends, people that I still talk to and keep tabs on today. But at the same time, I don't like that high tower shitting on people who are self-taught artists, which I don't know even how much people really do that. I don't know that I've seen it or experienced it myself personally, a little bit when I was applying to grad school, but I don't really feel like I was actually shit on. It was just, you know, people being real with me. But anyway, yeah, I think it's just as valuable to be able to discipline yourself and kind of learn the ropes and learn through trial and error on your own. So I don't know. I think both ways are valid. I think it just depends on the person and, you know, what their personality is and what works better for them. But at any rate, that big long digression was all to say the teacher himself was not particularly fond of the line work in the back. He was like, I don't know if I need to see your process. And that's going to be like an example of something that I'm still on the fence of right now, that critique. He's clearly more professional than I am. He has published works that have sold, and so that's definitely valuable input and critique. The reason why I'm on the fence about it is because this for me is a very personal project, and one of the things that I kind of like about having the lines in there is more of like a philosophical approach to it. The thing that I am going through right now and that my family's going through is something that's very raw and painful and messy. And one of the reasons why I'm on the fence about the professor's critique is that, yes, taking my process out would be the more professional thing to do, but because this is a more personal project that I don't even think will get published, I might try to sell it at some point, maybe. I don't know. I'll have to take names out and shit. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Right now, for me, it's like leaving those lines in and leaving the process in. To me, it represents like how emotional and messy this whole thing has been, and also kind of encompassing like, you know, my childhood and everything. Having all those mistakes, having all the mess back there is a reminder to me of how life is and how real, how messy real life is. So, I mean, that's kind of a critique. That's the one that I mentioned at the beginning of the video that I'm still kind of on the fence about whether or not I'm going to try to take the lines out, because if I do, I'm gonna have to like completely redo everything, and I don't know that I want to do that. I don't know that I want to do that. But so getting back to, that's what this video is just kind of explaining some of the critiques that I've gotten. So moving along, I should say, not getting back to, moving along. The second part of the story that I wrote in the winter course was one that I did an actual video on, and it was called Till the Mourning Comes. And this was where I really springboarded and decided, yes, I'm gonna use this class. I was already like taking the class to kind of help me figure out how to work on this project. But this last assignment that we did was what actually got me started working on the project. And so when I was in here, when I got critique, for the most part for these 3 pages, the critique was good. People liked how I was starting to play with the text and the snapshots. As I was doing sketches, I got some suggestions on how I was wording things, how it was maybe like a little confusing at first. Like I had a bunch of text here that I don't know if you can see it or not. I'm gonna try to zoom in. And maybe even turn on my arch light. Oh man, maybe I should have that on at the beginning. But there was like all kinds of text and shit here that I was thinking of adding. But in hindsight, and like because of like the way I had the page structured, people were confused on the order in which to read it, rightfully so, because you know I had this here which leads into the next page. But if you're reading it, you're gonna read, you know, if you're reading it the way it's supposed to be read, you go left to right, and then you've got like this text here, and then you got this text here. It was kind of confusing to people. So because of that critique, I decided, you know, do I need to have my inner thoughts vocalized in this instance? This is a project about me, yes. Well, not just about me, but about my dad, about my family. But even so, having that inner monologue, like part of telling this story is because I have a story to tell, and if it's going to be confusing, I thought that was a very good suggestion, and I couldn't find another place to put it, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead and take that out. So yeah, I'm gonna start from the beginning now. The order that I did this in was very, like, after this one, I did this one, this Uncomfortably Numb, and then I did a beginning song, and then the last thing that I did was working on With God on Our Side. I'm just gonna come back to the beginning of the project now. This is going to be like the first set of stories that I have in this work. So when I was being critiqued here, I had a couple pages done at a time, so some of the class was there for the first 3 pages that I did, which was this one, and this one. I actually did this one in page order. And so when I was being critiqued, again, people really liked how I was starting to play with like the text and making sure that it was legible. But when we got to this page, most of it people liked, but initially you can, again, I'm gonna zoom in. You can see that, see how this I had to physically move because I'm working traditionally, right? And here, initially I was experimenting and I wanted to have these panels offset, like this actually ended right here. So this was all pushed over and this was just empty space. And then likewise, this part of the panel was pushed over and this was all empty space. I was trying to like offset it and kind of play with like the panel setup, but overwhelmingly people were confused by that. And also not just confused, they just thought that it didn't look particularly good. It looked like there should have been something there in the blank spot. So that's kind of an example of like critique that I got that I thought was very valuable. Like I was trying something, I was playing around, and it did not work out. It did not pan out. And I could have ignored that critique because it was a hassle. I had to like physically cut this out and put some paper on the back. Y'all digital artists are gonna be like, this is why I work digital, and that's fine. work digital. It is less fucking work, let me tell you. But this also taught me like some valuable little tips and tricks if you're working traditionally. Because when I scan this in, I can find a way to like make sure that those lines don't really show up that much. But yeah, so I took that advice and I moved that panel, and I actually agree with them. You know, now that I've sat here and, you know, while I was doing the work, I was kind of grumbling to myself and like, oh, I can't believe I'm fucking listening to this advice, blah, blah, blah. Because, you know, when you get advice, when you get a critique, even if it's not personal, you take it personally. It's like, I made that decision. It was a good decision. And sometimes it takes you a little while to like reflect and think, oh, I was wrong. I'm to blame. Just kidding. I was wrong. This was actually a very good suggestion that people had. That's kind of like what I feel is like the value of having this critique, because you can have a very clear vision in your head, and sometimes you want to stick with that no matter what people say, but then other times you have like kind of a crackpot idea that's not particularly good, like I had done here, and then hearing other people, you know, having, you know, struggling with it and having like a problem with it really helped me like make this page look better than it was going to look. So there's another example of like the value of having like peer reviews. Most of the content, I will say, most of like the text that I have, like, you know, there's like going to be like 1 or 2 examples that I give at the very end of this video where people had some comments on what I was actually saying. But for the most part, people were okay with what I was, with like the text and the dialogue and the narration, which was important for me to make sure that like having other people read it, that what I was saying and what I was conveying was clear and actually made sense to them. That's another reason why I think it's valuable to like have a group of like people that you kind of, that you know that they don't really have like a horse in the game, so their suggestions are just to like help you out, and they're not going to take it personally if you don't take their critique. But their main goal is to like help you improve. They don't really have like a reason to like attack you or like just shit on your work, because I know like when you're on the internet, like just anyone can critique what you're doing, and sometimes in that sea there's a lot of really good valuable critique, but other times it's just people kind of trolling, wanting to like, I don't know, vent their frustrations out on you. Maybe they read something and they didn't understand it, or they didn't like it, and so they just want to shit on you because that's the first thing that came to their mind, and they were clearly never taught to be more respectful than that. But at the same time, there's also a lot of people who are like, you know, trying to like give good advice online, and maybe they just don't convey it very well, or they don't really know how to do it softly. And other times, you know, it's good advice and it sounds like good advice and it's not offensive. So I don't know, I mostly try to give people the benefit of the doubt, though I do know there's a lot of trolls out there. But one of the reasons why I think being in person is there's a little, when you're online, you have that like anonymity. I hope I said that right. Anonymity. Blah, blah, blah. I'm just fucking making up sound, y'all. You can be anonymous. That's the word I can say. And so because your identity is hidden, you might be more prone, not you, but you familiar, might be more prone to be less tactful and just kind of spew out whatever your thoughts are without really thinking about how it's going to affect someone, versus when you're in real life with like a group of people that you're working on critiquing each other, there's more of a community and there's less of that desire to alienate the people that are going to also critique your work. But furthermore, even if they're not like also critiquing, like if you're not critiquing their work, I feel like it's a lot less. The majority of people that you're going to come across are going to be less aggressive and maybe necessarily not want to hurt your feelings, and are a little bit more careful about that because you're physically there. You can see them. You see each other as three-dimensional human beings. I really think that's kind of like important. And one of the reasons why I Discord groups can be like that too, if you're like really close to the people in the Discord group, but just out in the wilds on the internet, I feel like people are often less tactful just because they don't have the time, they don't care, they don't have the repercussions of following them for being just a blatant asshole about their opinion. But anyway, moving along, I just, again, this is just kind of expressing like my opinions on like the value of getting critiques, especially in like small groups, which becomes a little bit more intimate, in my opinion. This page I did get a little bit of a critique on, not much. I wanted it to look crazy and wonky like this, you guys. That was very much intentional. I was trying to channel a little bit of Art Crumb with this page. Not nearly as detailed or as well done, but I wanted the goofy fucking look for this, in my opinion. He's way better at doing caricatures and stuff than I am, but like when I had this text here, I at first had it all black, but like the teacher and like the people in the class were having trouble discerning the S. Like they liked the idea of it coming out of the mouth and everything, and looping around, but they were, you know, having trouble seeing it because it was kind of blending in with the hair because I had it all black and then like I had the lines and stuff. So that's another critique that I received that I thought, yeah, actually that's a pretty good idea. So at first I just washed over to make it like white. And then I was like, you know what? When I started doing the wash, I was like, why don't I just fill that in with the blue? Why don't I just make that like a solid thing? And I think that it turned out pretty well. Maybe I should have done it with like the love over here too. Maybe I still will. I have time. I can always do that. But again, another suggestion that is like very helpful for me to make sure that my pages are legible. Okay, so there were only 3 in our class whenever these last 3 pages were being critiqued. It was myself, one other student, and the teacher. And I got some more good input from them. The rest of this they were pretty cool with. They didn't have like really any suggestions. It was all pretty easy to read, no problems. But on this page, the teacher was like, because I had like my text already written in with ink, because I just had like the inked page whenever I was being critiqued. I didn't have like the finished page yet that was washed. And he was like, you know, I like the text over here, but what would be really cool, like he was like super stoked, he was really excited. He's like, I think it would be really cool if you did like what you did on this page over here and had like black corners, not so much for the photograph, but to make that text a little bit more legible and to also kind of frame it and like draw the eye around. And I really liked that idea that he had. And then the other student who was there, she also confirmed that she kind of liked that idea. So yeah, I was really like, it wasn't even like, in my opinion, like a critique. It was like a suggestion on what would be like a cool effect to give a try. Again, something that I wouldn't have thought of on my own, which is why it was kind of nice being in a class with people who like had some cool ideas that I could kind of lift from them, that they could share, that they willingly give, and that I could lift and apply to like what I was working on. So yeah, those are like the critiques and stuff that I got on those pages. I've done an entire video on this and I just talked about it a little bit a minute ago, so I'm gonna skip that. I have a placeholder for a section I have not drafted yet. So I haven't really gotten much critique on these pages just because they're not anywhere near done. So I really don't have much to say about this section here, other than I'm not sure if I'm happy with how it's all laid out. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. And these fucking panels, man, they're a fucking hot mess. They are so not in line. So I don't know, when I find that when I get stuck, a lot of times it's when I don't like the layout of something. Like I wouldn't say that I get like artist block so much. I mean, I guess I do. I guess it literally is an artist block. But I think one of the things that holds me back is whenever I don't like the layout of a page. So I may end up like, you know, revisiting some of these thumbnails and seeing if I want to change it up a little bit. Because like I'm not happy at all with this one. I was trying to work on and I kept erasing it, and I don't know. I might have to revisit that. But yeah, I wasn't in class for these, I just uploaded them, that's what I got done. So there was really not much to be said about what I had completed. And I wasn't there because I was on a trip. Okay, the last one that I want to talk about is this section. I got a lot of compliments on this. So, I mean, it always feels good to get, like, you know, to have people, like, get what you're trying to do. But I also had a time where like things were a little confusing. Like at this point in the class, this is like the first one I did in the spring course. And so at that point we were kind of divvying up into groups. The professor was like, or the teacher was like experimenting with like how we were doing like their critiques. So sometimes we'd have big class and sometimes we'd be divided up into smaller groups. So the woman that I was with, most of the stuff she was able to understand very clearly, but the original sketch of this 8-track, I don't know how I had it drawn. I mean, I didn't really erase much. I must have like painted over it with the ink or, you know, whatever. But she was having trouble telling that this was an 8-track because I was drawing it poorly. I mean, I've seen 8-tracks, I've held 8-tracks, I bought an 8-track that I never listened to. It was like a Moody Blues one. So it's not that I wasn't like super familiar, but it had been years since I've seen one. And whereas I thought it kind of looked okay because I was having it, oh, I know what the deal was. I had it in the box. It was the 8-track in the box, so all it looked like was a fucking box, and she had no idea that it was an 8-track because you couldn't see like the tape or anything. That's what it was. That was the problem. So she gave me the suggestion of like, you know, maybe make it look a little bit more like the actual 8-track instead of like the box, because younger folks or anyone who's reading this who are not familiar with 8-tracks, they're not even gonna know what the fucking box is. But if they see it like this, then they might be familiar with what an 8-track is, or they might go back and take a look at like, you know, other music mediums that had been used in the past or whatnot. So I was like, okay, yeah, that's a great idea. I actually agree with you. I was trying to be lazy. I was in a hurry. I was like, well, I'll just do it in the box. And then I was like, no, if it's meant, like, because of her suggestion, I was like, if I'm gonna do it, I needed to not be lazy and do it right. And then there was something else down here that I was doing that she was a little confused on or thought didn't look particularly well. So I knew that I needed to like kind of redo this. So instead of what I was going to do, I ended up like just having a couple bricks here. Like I was definitely gonna have a brick, but there was other stuff that I was gonna do in this panel. And I was like, you know what? Why don't we just keep it simple, stupid? Kiss, you know, if you've heard that. I was like, I'm just gonna have it be bricks, and I think that will be just as effective as adding too much detail, right? So I was able to add more detail here and then be lazy down here. You know what I'm saying? This page didn't have too much critique on it. Everything was pretty legible. Personal critique, I want to redo this bubble here, but everything made sense to everyone, so there wasn't really much to say on it. This page here had it was obviously the most high effort page in this batch of everything. But this whole idea, like I was kind of thinking about superimposing these anyway, like in the thumbnail, because we also, in addition to like critiquing pages that are inked or washed, we also critique and discuss like the thumbnails. So in the thumbnail, I didn't really have a clear vision of what I wanted to do with this page. It was literally, if I can find it, hold on. So critiquing was essentially going on during our thumbnail work too, is what I was saying. But do you see how I didn't really have an idea of what I was doing here? Like I knew that I wanted planes and I knew that I wanted bombs. And I had kind of the idea of superimposed faces of grandparents. I was gonna have both of my grandparents, but then I decided not to. But because of that, they were like, well, we can't really critique your thumbnail right now. And it really helped, but they liked the idea of like superimposing an image on it. So because that idea for me was confirmed to be kind of a good idea, a challenge to kind of accept and try to do, that's why I ended up doing this page in this manner. But there's still critiques on it. First off, they like it and what it looked like, but you can see that I had to do like a lot of whiteout because some of it was hard for them to read, and so that was something that I had to go back and redo, and I may even still have to redo some of this, I don't know. The other critique that I haven't implemented yet was that they didn't like how what I was initially trying to do over here was to mimic the shape of the planes, but I only did it like in that one corner. So like I got this, bless you. So I got like the suggestion to just straighten this out, which I haven't yet, but I actually agree with them. Like it's been months now because this was like the first project that I worked on in that class, and I still remember that I need to fix that. There's also, I don't know, like my text, it's better than it was. Like I had a lot of confusing text here, and then I had shit down here, and I was like, no, I'm just gonna have it go here to here to here, here. This is where it's confusing, I guess, here and here. But I don't know that it really matters what order you read this in. I would read it this way, but I don't know. I may have to rethink how to do this. This page, because it does kind of take you out if you just go here, here, which is like the natural way of doing it. I don't know, you guys. I don't know. I'll figure it out. But this isn't even like my grandma. This is like my grandma's sister. This is like my grandma's half sister. But at the time of working on this project, because my dad was estranged from his family, some of his siblings he still talked to because, you know, they all kind of suffered the same bullshit in their household from their mother. But because they were estranged, there were not a lot of pictures. And so the only picture I really had was my grandmother's older half sister, whose father had died, and that's why my great grandmother ended up marrying like this white colonialist, was because her husband died, and she was left with 2 children, and it was an awful thing to happen to her, which is kind of what I'm trying to work out through all of this writing. Was like kind of like generational trauma and shit, and how it all started in the Philippines before the war. But at any rate, the critique that I got, I'm still working with that critique. I'm still working on it, and I'm still keeping it in mind, because I think that although I really like this page, I may end up fixing that, and I may have to like work a little bit with the text some more. But I like how it turned out. I was really scared to do this because I've never done something like this before, and I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make the picture like stand out, you know? This page also got some critique. This is my first time, like, well, not my first time, but like this is another instance, I should say, where I had to physically move text, because I sure as shit was not rewriting this, because you can see I had to use this pen, and this pen for me is very uncomfortable to use. This was physically, I'm not gonna lie, you guys, I'm not being melodramatic, because of how careful I was trying to be and how I was trying to mimic like the writing of The Wall, the album. It really hurt writing, like it physically hurt my fucking hand writing this goddamn text. So when I initially had this, because I didn't have this page done yet, nobody understood that this was my grandma. And I could have probably ignored the suggestion, but I figured I wouldn't. I figured I would just listen to what the suggestion was. Initially, this text here with she, because on this page you can see it's not established that this is my grandma. This is the page that established that it was my grandma. My dad's mother and father met during World War II. Grandpa fought in the Pacific. He encountered Grandma Priscilla in Manila. Oh god, that rhymes! Oh my god, that was not intentional, you guys, but that's her name.
Priscilla from Manila.
Priscilla from Manila. Holy shit, I've never read this aloud. Oh my god. Anyway, I digress. Holy shit. But at time, I wanted to work on this page first, which is why when they were critiquing it, this is obviously a double page spread, right? And personally, when I read a double page spread, because it's a single page, I read from here to here to here to here to here to here. But I mean, I can see how it's confusing, and to be quite honest, I didn't really feel the need to fight against that critique, because the whole class was like saying it's kind of confusing, because I had this she lashed out here, like if it's supposed to be trauma is cyclic, and I had the brick by brick, my paternal grandmother walled herself in. And then I had she lashed out her... Yeah, okay, yeah, that's why they were confused, because they were reading trauma is cyclic, she lashed out her pain and emotional, mental, blah, blah, blah. They were reading that. They were reading this as a page instead of viewing this as like an entire splash page, a 2-page spread. So actually, I mean... So I changed it around. I physically had to move these fucking bricks because, again, I was not gonna redo this, but you can see where I had to move shit and then fix up the line work. What's the saying? You pick your battles, right? But I mean, I don't know. This is something that I'm gonna kind of like. I'm still kind of on. Like I did it. I did the suggestion. I did the critique. But I don't know. How do you? I want to know. You know, if you get this far in the video, if you have a double-page spread like in a comic book, how do you read it? Do you like if it's not like it's an entire like this is clearly I guess these are technically panels here, but there's no panel. So it's like if you had like a superhero spread, would you be reading from here to here to here to here? Or would you be reading it's one picture from here to here, here to here? I don't know. I mean, I've just read so many different types of comics that do it different ways that I don't know. I don't mind being pulled out. Everybody tells me about like being pulled out of the reading, and I know that happens to me. I know it does, but usually because I've read manga a lot of my life and had to like train myself on how to fucking read it right to left, rereading shit over and over doesn't really take me out of the story because I've had to do it my whole life. Also, I don't know. I'm just kind of a slow reader anyway, so I don't know. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. It probably doesn't. I don't know why I brought it up, but. Yeah, I don't know. So that was a critique that I got because they didn't realize this was my grandmother until they got over to this page, because I was treating this as a single page and going right or left to right, as you would on like, you know, if it were panels. But I don't know. Maybe they're right. Well, I had it up here. I can feel. Anyway, it doesn't matter because I took it out and it's fine. It's fine. Everything is fixed. It's fine. No, I didn't have it up there. I had it right here. Okay, so that was an example of a critique that I received that I wasn't 100% sure if I agreed with it, but because a majority of people was having, you know, they were having trouble understanding what was going on, especially since it was out of context. Again, like they would have known that was my grandmother if I'd had this page done, but it was like one of the most daunting pages, so I did everything out of order, you guys. And we were critiquing like once a week. I'd have like 3 or 4 pages done. But yeah, that's an example of, you know, I took someone else's suggestion, whether or not I necessarily agreed with it, because the majority of people were having difficulty understanding. And if I were just left up to my own devices, probably the majority of people who come across this would still have trouble understanding what I was doing. So I bit the bullet and I did it. Sometimes you gotta swallow your pride, people. Not always though. There are times when you shouldn't. Because if you don't want fucking critique, then people need to butt the fuck out. You know, leave someone alone. They don't want to be critiqued on it. And then this is the last page. There were not too many suggestions here. I guess I decided against, maybe I need to go back and add some more detail. I had a little circular thing here. When this was a sketch, I just had his face all scribbled out. And the reason why I'd done that was because I don't want to remember my dad like that. And what he looked like, because he was always like a very plump, he was like a plump Tom Bombadil, only he was an asshole sometimes. a sometimes mean plump Tom Bombadil. He was cool other times, you know, he was human. That's why I'm working on this, is because he was fucking human and had a lot of fucking shit that he had to deal with. But I didn't, like in the sketch, I just scribbled out his face, and I guess I had already subconsciously kind of connected it to the lyrics. So, I mean, I'm not trying to be a big downer here, you guys, but like, this entire thing is about the wall, obviously, and like my connection and my dad's connection with the wall and Pink Floyd in general. But if you know anything about, I mean, the wall like really has always kind of, well, not always, but like as I got older, it meant more to me as I started, actually knowing what the album was about. Like, when you're younger, you know what the album's about, but it's not until you start learning more and having those experiences that you can really, in my opinion, connect. Although when you are young, some people have lived pretty rough lives and maybe connect with it at a younger age than me. But at any rate, like, it really resonated because of like the topic of it, the topic of the album. And so that's why I chose that for this chapter. And it was also something that resonated, I believe, with my dad. And one of the last tracks, well, it's not the last track, but one of the last tracks on the double album is Waiting for the Worms, I think. Is that the name of it, Brad? Is it Waiting for the Worms? That's the name of the song?
That's the name of a song.
Okay, yeah, it's one of the songs on it. And so I personally found it fitting to kind of end on that note. Yeah, it's really dark, you guys. Maybe I should have had a trauma fucking warning at the beginning of this, but I'm a terrible person. I'm sorry. I'll put one in whenever I actually go to edit the video. But to me, that just had like a double meaning, both for like how my dad treated his personal childhood trauma, and also the way that the titular character, which is just, the embodiment of Roger Waters dealing with his trauma. I felt like the double meaning was important to convey, but also there's the meaning of, sadly, a little more morbidly, sitting there watching someone you love passing is like waiting for the worms. So when I did this page, I feel like it was kind of subconscious, like the connection, like when they were looking at like the sketching, they were like, oh my God, his face being scribbled out like that kind of reminds me of the last line there, the waiting for the worms. So yeah, again, it's kind of dark, you guys, but I was like, okay, this is all, the symbolism here for me is coupling well enough to demonstrate to like total strangers how I was feeling and what I wanted to get out. So I was kind of glad for that critique. And again, critique, everyone always uses it in like a negative way, but critique actually entails like positive things that people are telling you you're doing right also. We only ever think of critique in like the negative sense, but it's like, no, it's both positive and negative feedback and neutral feedback at times. So yeah, that's, to me, I feel like I've done, in my opinion, some of the best work that I have created because I've been working in a setting where I'm getting like that push and pull from other people. Where again, because this is a personal project, I have the final say in what I want to do and how I want this to look, what I want to convey. But there's value in getting other people's opinion, respectful opinions, and taking that and listening to it and building upon it to improve your craft and improve your storytelling and like your communication and conveying what you're feeling through the medium. So yeah, that's what this video was about. I initially was going to do something different. I was just going to do a rehash of my steps of how I complete a project. I know I've been talking about that, but the more I was listening to the audio, like, I would need to probably re-record it because I was talking about like stuff that's like come and gone and past tense. So I decided I was going to go ahead and just start over and do this instead. But I don't know. I'm not going to make any promises, you guys, because I have no idea what I'm going to end up doing. Maybe I'll go back and revisit that. Probably not. A lot of times when I just have footage sitting around and recordings, I end up just not using it and want to move on. I don't know. But I hope that, if anything, this video kind of like, I hope that I was able to better construct like my opinions on critique, because overall, like, if you're someone who does not want critique, I'm down for that. I think that you should just let people get their emotions and enjoy their craft. Let them enjoy what the fuck they're doing, and you don't need to come and shit on their parade. Or even if you're trying to help, sometimes you're trying to help someone by giving a critique, but like that little critique, it may even, it may not mean anything to you. Maybe you're just saying, hey, this, that, or the other, but if they don't want that critique, it can maybe, like, depending on what their frame of mind is or what their personality is, that could maybe be soul crushing and like prevent them from working further on dealing with their emotions, like, graphically. So, I mean, when I talk about critique in this video, as I mentioned earlier, it's wanted critique, and and this is a very, very specific setting where I'm getting like critiques from my peers, people who are working on comics also, so they kind of have an idea of what they're doing, or at the very least they have an eye for art and can give you like some pointers here and there. And I think that's very valuable. Like, I mean, how many groups of writers, you hear about people like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, and then you hear about like T.S. Eliot, I think, and was it Carlos Williams? Very different poets and writers. Well, not so much Lewis and Tolkien, but it's getting like personal feedback from like your peers and people that you consider your friends that can oftentimes lead to you completing something that you're very proud of. Or even if you're just in like a writing group or something and maybe you're not necessarily friends yet or will ever be friends, but it's still good to get that valuable input from time to time, in my opinion. So I hope this video conveyed that. I don't know if it did or not. Ultimately, as I say with the end of most of my opinions videos, you should do whatever's most comfortable for you. If you want to step outside of your comfort zone and receive critique, be ready for it. Don't be a dick about it if you ask for it. But if you're not, comfortable, then don't ask for a critique. If you're just having fun and you're fucking around and you're just having fun and you're having a good time, you don't need critique. You know what you're doing. You know what purpose that art is serving you, and you don't need to have anyone else's opinion like, rain on your parade. Keep it off my wave, as Soundgarden would say. My husband was talking about Soundgarden earlier today, so we got to bring it back to what I was listening to or hearing today. Okay, anyway, this is a long enough video. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. I don't know if it was or not. I don't know if any of my videos are ever helpful. But if it gets you motivated to do something, I don't know, then I guess that my job here is done. Anyway, I'm out. Peace and love. Very well. And keep on trucking.
No one in government takes responsibility for anything anymore. We foster, we obfuscate, we rationalize. Everybody does it. That's what we say. So we come to occupy a moral safe house where everyone's to blame, so no one's guilty.